In today's video, I'm going to show you 7 simple scripts that you can easily add to your Google Sheet. Starting from the first one, Rich will add a timestamp anytime you edit the value anywhere on the Google Sheet. The second version of that first one again is just in a single column, but it won't work on different columns. The second script will add a note to a cell with the value, the user, and a timestamp when that change was made. The third script will hide a row based on a checkbox, or I'll show you how to do other options as well. Second version of the third script is deleting instead of hiding. And then the fourth script will automatically insert a new row at the top whenever you add data in that blank row at the top. And then the fifth one will automatically fill in a product amount or text based on a drop-down selection from the script. The sixth one will populate a dependent drop-down based on the options that you select, just like that. And then the final one is how to actually clear a form, something like this, using a drop-down to automatically clear it out and increment your invoice number. So let's jump right in with our basic setup. So we're going to go to extensions and app script, and this will create the project if you not have one already, or it'll pull up the existing scripts. So if you've not named the project already, go ahead and do that here. And then in our coding window, we want to have a onEdit function. And so if it's blank, for example, here, we can just take this and do function onEdit. Otherwise, if there's nothing here, then you may want to type this out manually. And so in that case, you do function onEdit, and then we'll put E inside the parentheses, and then we have these curly braces. I'm going to delete this real quick, and we're going to go with this. So this part has to be just like this. So function space and then lowercase on, uppercase E, and then finish the edit. And then inside these parentheses, we have this E. This does not have to be E. It can be W, it can be whatever, but general practice is to use E. And then one thing to make sure, anytime you make changes, make sure you hit save before you X out of there. So that way those changes are applied and saved. So what we're going to do here in this onEdit is this E stands for the event object. And so basically the way that works is every time you make a change in the Google Sheet, that is an edit. And so an edit would then flow through this E, and then we can use it in here. And this contains data about it. So for example, let's go ahead and grab the first thing. So the first thing we'll do is our sheet, what sheet was edited. And we get that using E, and then everything here is dot notation. So we do E dot, in this case, it'll be source. And then we're going to do get active sheet. And so that will get us the tab that was changed. And so notice we have here let, and so this is just declaring a variable. And so this is our variable with the name of sheet. Equals is an assignment. So it's saying let sheet equal what this contains. So now if we use sheet from then on, it's going to be this, whatever this was. So that's just how variables work. It's just what they're called. And a variable is just a way to store that data. So let's grab our other things. So we can get, for example, the range that was changed. And this is E.range. And then from our range, and so for example, if we change this to warm, the range is going to be D8. But we can get those as numbers, and that's usually how we work. So in this case, it'd be 4 is our column and 8 is our row. And so then we can use that to reference things later. And so let's go ahead and get that here. So row equals range dot get row. And then column will be let col equal range dot get column. And then finally, let's get our value. So the new value that was just added. So just like that. All right, one more thing I want to address super quickly is what if you only want this to work on a particular tab? So for example, CRM. So in that case, we can use our sheet variable that we already declared here. And so we can use a if statement, and if statement syntax is if, parentheses, and then curly braces for the code. And so inside the parentheses is where we make a true or false statement. And so we can do something like sheet.getName is equal to CRM. Now, one thing you'll note is here, when we're assigning to a variable, we use a single equals. Now, when we use two equals, it's a comparative. So this is asking a question. Is sheet.getName equal to CRM? If the answer is true, then any code inside here will run. If not, then it'll pass over. So this gives us a way to only run code if we have a specific tab. Now we could do the reverse and say not equal to. And so instead of two equal signs, we use the exclamation point and equals. And what this means is does not equal, and we could say something like Dropdowns. So we'll just go ahead and go back to equals CRM and run from there. And so now that we have the basic layout, let's go ahead and jump into our first use case. So first we're going to add a date and time to this last edited column anytime anything in any of these columns is changed. This one's a very easy one. So we already determined that a change has happened and we're making sure it only applies in this sheet. So basically all we really have to do is generate a timestamp and then add it to this row in the correct column. So to make our timestamp, I'm just going to use let right now is our timestamp. And then I'm going to go ahead and format it using utilities format date. And then up here, you can see some helper text on how you can accomplish this. So I'm going to do new date to make a new date. And then here you can see a time zone. Now, normally if we had a reference to the spreadsheet instead of our non-authorized version, I could get the time zone from the spreadsheet, but since we don't, I'm just going to make it show up right here like this. So let's do GMT -5. And then now I can do a format for my date. And so you can check out the documentation for example of how those work. I'm just going to put something quickly together here. And then let me go ahead and do my time here. Just like that. And so this would be our hour, minutes, and then this will show AM, PM. All right, so there's our timestamp. And then all we need to do is add it. So we'll do get range, and then we'll start with our row. And then for our column, we just need to see which column this is. Let me see if we'll show up a number here. So 7. Let's go ahead and do that, 7, and then set value of right now. And so what this will do is every time we edit the sheet, it will add that timestamp. And so let's go ahead and check it out. So first of all, let's try changing a value and see what happens there. And there's our timestamp. Now this one's doing 24-hour time because I did uppercase. So if we change that to lowercase, that should go to 12-hour time if you prefer that. So let's just go ahead and change that again. And there we go. So now it's 4:55. And so that works whether we're changing a value. Let's come down here and add a value. Or if we do a checkbox, or in this case, it works even if we delete a value. So basically anytime a change is registered, it's going to add that timestamp in that column. So what if we want to iron in a little bit more on when we want to add that timestamp? So for example, what if we only want to apply when we change the status? So in that case, we can use some more if logic. So we can keep this one here and we can just nest another if statement if we like, or we could add it here with ampersands for and, or this for or. But in this case, we're just going to nest it just to keep it simpler. And so in this case, we're going to do is column equal to, in this case, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4 if we're just doing status. So if column is 4, then we're going to continue. And again, we need those curly braces. So those curly braces can get a little wild at times to try to keep track of them, but it will give you warning if there's not enough. And one thing that helps, if you right click format document, it tabs them automatically so you can see where those line up. And so we made some changes, go ahead and save this. And now if we go back and if I do this checkbox again, nothing should show up there. And I wait, nothing's happening. Let's go ahead and change this real quick to hot. And now that timestamp shows up. So now it's only working when we do the status. So let's go ahead and change that to the checkbox and then we'll move on. So all I have to do here then is change this to column equals 5. And then I can come down here, hit this checkbox and timestamp. I change this, nothing happens. And let me actually delete this. And now if we change this again, you can see that indeed nothing is happening over there. It's only when we do the checkbox. Now, finally, to iron in just a little bit more, we're going to do if status is only equal to certain ones. So let's do if the status is warm or hot, but none of the other statuses. So here we're going to come back here and we needed column 4. And then we're going to do an ampersand. So this is and. So column has to be 4 and we have another condition. Now in this condition, we actually have an or because we want where it's warm or hot. So I'm going to use another set of parentheses because in here, we're going to use an or statement. And so I'm going to use those 2 pipe symbols. This is above the backslash. So in my case, I hit shift and backslash, and then I get these 2 pipe symbols. And what this stands for is or. And so we have and or. And so in here then, we can say is value equal to warm or value is equal to hot. And so now in this case, our timestamp should only happen if we have a drop-down value of warm or hot. And so let's check this out. I'm just going to clear these out real quick. And so let's come down here to lost, change this to warm, and there's a timestamp. Let's come down here. Let's just do a new one. I'm going to do cold. And there should be nothing. So nothing. If we change this now to warm, there it pops up. Come down here and select hot right away. And it pops up. So that's how we can use only certain statuses to populate our last edited column. All right, so next let's look at adding a note to a cell whenever it's edited with the user, timestamp, and the value that they added. So let's go back to our script. So what we need here is we have our value, so we need our user and timestamp. So if you watch the first use case, we already created the timestamp. So I'm going to go through that a little more quickly here. So again, we're going to use our utilities, format date, and then we're going to create a new date. So it kind of gives you a little bit of structure here. You can look at more formats here. I'm going to run through this real quick. So new date, and then time zone in GMT. So GMT -5. And then I'm going to create a little format here. So I'm going to do month, day, year, and then hour, minute, and A for AM, PM. And then for the user, so let user equal session get active user get email. Now, if you noticed, that get user login ID is X'd out or crossed out, and it's because that method is no longer supported due to privacy. So this is the only way that we can use this here. And so in here now we have our user, timestamp, and value. So we just need to create a note. So let's do this. Let note equals, and then I'm going to use what's called a back tick. This is under the tilde on my keyboard or above tab. And then the reason why I use this is because we can use something called template literals. So that looks like a $sign and a curly brace. And when I do the left curly brace, it adds the right one automatically. And so what I can do in here is I can use any of these variables. So for example, I could use user, just like that. And so now what I could do is I could just say user outside of that template literal. And so this would be user text, and then this would be user, the variable. And so I'm going to combine user with timestamp and value, and I want to separate them with a new line. So the way I can do that is \n, and that will add a new line. And then it's going to look a little weird because I'm not going to add spaces, but I'm going to go ahead and do the timestamp here, and then add that timestamp variable, and then another new line, and then let's do that value. Then add that val right there. So there's our note. And now let's just add it to the sheet. So sheet.getRange, and we have that row and column. And then we're going to set note with that note, just like that. So make sure you hit save after that's done. And if we come back here and let's just change something like this, and then we'll see that note got added really quickly there. And it has the user name with the email, with timestamp and that value. So what if you want to add multiple? So in other words, keep a log of all the changes. So we have our if statement to find our sheet name, but we need to find out, is there already a note? And if so, we want to combine the notes. So what we want to do before we do this is get a current note if there's one. And so we have this sheet.getRange row call, so we can paste that up here. But this time we want to get the note. Now at this point, we want to use this to run a true false, because remember these if statements, we want to test if this is true. So we basically now want to test, is there note? And so when you do get note, it's either going to be a blank string or it's going to be whatever the note is. And so let's just say current note is equal to that. And so if current note is equal to blank, then we'll add our note like normal. And actually I can pull this out of here. So if current note is blank, we're going to just set the note. Otherwise, if current note is not equal to blank, then let's combine the notes here. So we have our new note and our old note. And what makes sense to me is putting the new note on top. And so let's just add the old note or the current note at the bottom. So we'll do note, and I'm going to use this plus equals, and then those backticks again. And then what I'm going to do, because if I just add them directly below, it's going to be a little confusing. So like, for example, if we do this and then we do the next one right below like that, it looks a little weird. So let's add a blank row between them. And so what I'm going to do here is \n, and then I'm going to do current note. And now we can go ahead and set that note here. Format document, just clean up our tabbing a little bit. And so now everything should be in place. So we get our current note if there is one. We're setting our new note text here. And then if there's not a current note, we'll just set the note. If there is a current note, then we'll append it at the end of our new note. So let's go ahead and check it out. So first of all, let's change this one just so we can see that combined note there. So let's check it out. And there we go. So there's the most recent one, and there is the prior one. And so let's just make sure this works on a brand new note. And there we go. Sure enough, there is our new note. Now we're going to look at how to hide a row or delete a row based on either a checkbox or a drop-down selection. So let's jump in with hiding a row based on a checkbox. So this is column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we only want to do it if the checkbox is checked, which if we take a quick look here, means the value is true. So let's go ahead and put that in our script. So we have our base script here, and then let's go ahead and do a quick check. So we can either add it into this if statement again, or we can do one inside here. So let's go ahead and do that again here. So what we're going to do is column equal to 5 and is value equal to true. And so this is comparing two things. We're comparing the column and seeing if it is indeed equal to 5 and if the value is true. So is it in this column, and did we check the checkbox? If so, now we can hide the row. So we're going to use our sheet variable that we've declared up here. So sheet, and then we can do hide rows and then do our row. So one thing, if you're typing this out, you may see that, oh, hide rows is a valid method. Now that one, you have to get the range first. So hide rows allows us to specify a number because this range.getRow is giving us the number of the row that was edited. And so this just is faster to do, as you can probably see. So let's go ahead and save our script. And then if we come over here, we should be able to check one of these and see it disappear. Or can you see something disappear, or does it just disappear? That's a puzzle there. Let me know what you think. All right, so we just hid that row using the checkbox, so we can unhide it, and then we can rehide it. So whenever you have a hidden row, there will be these triangles to the top and bottom of it. If we do another one right next to it, now we have two rows in that hidden section, so we can unhide them both just like that. And that's how that works. So let's look at what it takes to do this with a status, and then we'll be able to just switch this over to deleting a row. So in this case, let's take a status of lost. And if the status is lost, we want to hide that row. So this is a pretty quick change. So we're one column to the left. And then here we just change from true to lost. Hit save. And then we come over here. If I hit lost on this one, that row just disappeared. All right, there it is again. So now let's do a very simple transition to delete the row. And so now we're just going to do sheet.delete row, and then we can put our row in there. And now it's come, and this one's currently set to if we select lost. So let's come down here and select lost. And that is now deleted. And then obviously it'd be very easy to switch this back to that column and then switch this back to true. And then let's check that out one more time here. So let's go ahead and delete Bill Ball. There we go. And it's gone. So that's how you hide or delete a row. So next, let's look at automatically inserting a new row at the top. So normally this is used when you're entering data, but you don't want to scroll down to the bottom every time. And so you want to keep the newest data always at the top. So this one's very easy to add. And so if we go to our base script, all we have to do here, and so in this case, I'm just going to add it right here. This is really easy. We're just going to do is row equal to 2. And this is our starting row. So if you have another row above here, basically just check to see if it's this first data row. And if it is, then we're going to add a row above. So sheet.insert row before, and then we'll put row. So super simple script. Let's go ahead and make sure this is saved. And then we'll come up here and we'll just say add note. And then it will insert a new row there. And so what this will do then is if we add a date, for example, it's going to bump that down, and then we can keep entering data. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you can add things like formulas and stuff like that when you insert that new row. And at that point, you basically just do sheet.getRange, and then you do 2 as a row, and then whatever column it was. So for example, 3, and then you could do things like set formula and put in your formula like that. Like, let's say C2 divided by B2 or something like that. And then you could always add those formulas at the top if they are not there. Next, we're going to look at adding a specific value or text when something is selected. And so as an example, I'm going to use a product selection, and then we'll fill in an amount. Now your question may be, well, why don't I just add something here with the prices and then use a formula? So that works great, except for if the price changes. And so in this case, you'd be able to add the prices and update them in the script, and then it would automatically update whenever you'd select those products without affecting the prior data. So let's go ahead and jump right in. We have product 1, product 2, product 3. And so I'm going to create a little object up here. We're going to call this our pricing. And so an object is curly braces, And then what we can do here is product 1, for example, and we could set a price of 10. And then comma, we can do product 2, and we'll just say 20 for this one, and product 3, what the heck, let's do 30 for this one. All right, so there's an object. And so basically what we need to do is when a value is selected in our product column, we need to find it here and then use that value. And so let's go ahead and add an if statement here. And we're going to say is column equal to, and this would be column 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's column equal to 4. And then we need to find that value. Now, one thing we may want to add here as well, just so we don't have unexpected errors, is say is value not equal to blank. Because if you deleted a product, for example, it may throw this off. So then all we have to do is, so we have in this case a value. And so if we selected product 1 as example, we want to look in here and return 10. So the way we would do that is we'll get let price equal pricing val. And so what this will return is 10 if we selected product 1. And so now we can do sheet.getRange, and we have our row, and then we just need to go 1 over. So we were in 4, now we need to go to 5. And then we can set value with our price. And so we'll save this script again, and let's go check it out. So let's go ahead and select product 1. And there's our $10. Product 2, $20. Product 3, $30. Now let's say the price just changed. I'm going to bump them up, 11, 22, and 33. And so if we come back, these prices have not changed. Now if I go down here and select product 1, now it's the new price. So this is where often that kind of logic comes into play, is that when your price changes, then you can just quickly update it in the script, and it flows automatically whenever they select those. Now, the only thing I want to note is it doesn't have to be a number here. And in that case, you would just do text. So for example, here we could say bronze, for example, and then we could do silver. And then here we could do gold, right? Like if those correspond to a tier level. And then make sure that saves, and then come down here. And now if we do product 1, now it's going to bring back bronze. If I do product 2, we have silver, and product 3, we have gold. So it can be a number or text, and then you can just apply it just like that. Next, we're looking at dependent dropdowns. And so we have a list of dropdowns here, and I have it populated from here. But we want to then populate a list of employees from the script. And so there's ways to do it in Google Sheets, but the script often works better. And so I have a object already put together here. I'll walk you through the structure of this. So an object has these curly braces around it. And then within it, it has a series of keys and values. And so what we have here is each drop-down value that I have here corresponds to one in this list. So we have accounting, and then we have a colon, and then we have these brackets for an array. So the whole thing is an object, and then this is an array. And so an array then has comma separated values. So as you can see here, we have 3, we have 4 here, and I spelled that wrong or not. And then we have singles here as well. And so what we're going to do is basically when a dropdown is selected in this column, we're going to find it here and then use this as our dropdown options. And so let's go ahead and we're just going to add our conditions right here. So we want to make sure this only runs when we select something in column D, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. And so let's go ahead and do that here. So we do multiple conditions with 2 ampersands. So column is equal to 4. And then I'm going to do and value is not equal to blank, just so when it's if we didn't select something or deleted something, it's not trying to then find that. And then we'll do this. We'll do a list and employees, and we'll look for that value. So this is the way you find things in a object. And so we're just using this bracket here. And so in the employee object, we're looking for that value. And so that's going to find the keys and then return this value. So value, 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 right? It's all about the value. But that's how that works. So inside that object, we're looking for whatever we selected and then returning the key here or the value here to this list variable. All right, so enough explanation. Let's dive into this. So next we need to create a validation rule. So I'm just going to say rule here and then spreadsheet app and then new data validation. And then we can see the different options here. So what we want is down here and it's require value in list. And so we already have that list. So we'll just go ahead and type that in. And so we're taking the list from here and putting it in here. And then we can add other options if we want. So for example, we could do that allow invalid. And what this does is it won't let someone select something that's not in that list. So I'm just going to go ahead and do false in there and then go ahead and build. And then now simply all we'd have to do is apply that rule. So we do sheet, get range, and then row, but we want to go one more column over. So we're looking at edits in column 4. So we could do column +1, +1, not +4. Or we could just do straight up 5. And then what we're going to do is set data validation. And then we can add that row. All right, so save our script and let's go check this out. So let's start with one that has multiple. So for example, sales. And then there is our new dropdown with the sales team. So we can select Dwight there. And then we can come down here. Maybe let's go to accounting. And then there's our list of accountants there. This is a very easy and quick way to be able to do a dependent dropdown where the options here then determine a different set of options in the next column. So you can fill this with whatever you need, whether it's a couple or multiple options, and you can fill it like that. So before we quit on this one, I want to show you one more thing on this is what if you only have one value and we want to automatically select it. So we've already covered one similar to this, but what we're going to do here is if list length is equal to 1, then what we're going to do here is actually set that value as well. So set value, and then we'll do that list. And actually here we need to pop that out. So that should do it there. Make sure we saved it and then come here. And so let's say we did the manager. So there we go. Now it gave that drop down, but also filled them in. So for our final use case, we have obviously a much different sheet here. This is a sample invoice that you could download as PDF or you could print. And then what I want to add here is a script that will automatically clear out these fields when we're done. So the way we're going to do that is using a little drop down, and this won't be visible on the PDF. Clear form. Remove this other option, and then I'm going to change this to an arrow. And so if we go back to print, for example, you can see it doesn't show up. And so that's just a convenient hidden way that we can use to trigger the script. So what we're going to do in the script is when this is clear form, we're going to clear these items, this one, and then we'll go ahead and actually increment this invoice number. Neat little handy trick there. And then we'll clear out these fields down here. So first of all, let's figure out which one this is. So this is row 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with a value of clear form. So let's go ahead and do that here. So we're going to add some conditions here. So ampersand will mean both have to be true. So column is equal to 6. And then another ampersand means all these have to be true. So we'll just go ahead and add the rest. Row equals 1. And then finally, val is equal to clear form. So if all those are true, then let's clear the form. So let's just start with the top here. So we can either use the numbers, so kind of like this, column and row. But when it comes to the sheet like this, we could use just the letters and the numbers just to make it easier. So for example, we clear out C4 and C5. So let's go ahead and start with that. Get range C4 to C5, and then we'll do a clear content on that. And then let's clear content on G4. So I'm just gonna copy this and just do it a couple more times. So let's do G4 here. And then for G5, we want to get whatever the current one is and add one. So let's do that real quick. So invoice num, and then let's paste that, but change this to get value. So need a dot there, get value. And this will be G5. So then what we need to do is invoice num plus plus, and this will add one to it, and then we can set it back to that. We'll set value, invoice num. All right, and then we should only need one of those. So the last one will be to clear out this. So B8 through G33, which actually we have formulas over here. So we really only need to clear out these. So B to E33. So B8. I'm gonna have to go back because I can't remember all that for that long. So B8 to E33. Let's put that E33 in there. All right. And then one more thing we'll need to do is reset this. So this was again F1. So we can just do sheet.getRange F1 clear content. I guess I did need that last one. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. So let's do clear form here. And then look at that. Cleared it all out, got this incremented, and we're all ready for our next invoice. And that is it for today's video. I really do hope these scripts save your Google Sheets life, save you time, energy, and effort. And so if this video has been helpful for you, make sure to like and subscribe, and then check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript. And then as always, thanks for watching and have a great day.